A few months ago, my husband found messages between me and a coworker. He caught me leaving my phone unlocked on the counter, something I rarely do. The messages were flirtatious, not overtly scandalous, but enough to make it clear that my coworker was heading in a direction that was anything but appropriate. My husband didn't explode. He didn't yell or rage. Instead, he asked me, with unsettling calmness, if I thought this was acceptable. I froze. My mind scrambled for an excuse, a way to downplay it. But all I could muster was a weak admission that, yes, perhaps it had started to border on something inappropriate. I insisted that I had done nothing to encourage it. That was a lie. I knew I had been leading him on for weeks, enjoying the attention, feeding into the flirtation. My husband told me to stop immediately. His voice was steady, firm, not angry, but with a weight that scared me more than if he had shouted. He warned me this wasn't a joke, that if I kept going down this path, I would regret it. I promised him I would end all contact. And at first, I did. I blocked my coworker, wanting to prove to myself that I had control, that I could stop. But then, little by little, I convinced myself it was harmless to unblock him, that we could just talk, that I wasn't doing anything wrong, because I wasn't physically cheating. I told myself I was in control, that I could keep it light, keep it casual. That was another lie. The attention was intoxicating. Soon, the late-night texts returned. Then came private lunches, stolen moments that felt exhilarating and forbidden. It was like I was chasing a high, something I couldn't walk away from, even as the guilt loomed in the background. 2 months ago, it finally became physical. After that, it was like a dam had broken. There was no hesitation, no restraint. It was reckless, selfish, and yet in the moment, I couldn't bring myself to care. Now, I'm almost certain my husband knows. It started subtly, a shift in his behavior so small at first that I barely noticed. But then, the little things that had once been constants in our marriage began to disappear. The midday text asking how my day was. The quick kisses before he rushed out the door. The warmth in his eyes when he looked at me. Now, he barely speaks to me. When he does, it's cold, clipped, as though forcing himself to engage in even the simplest conversation is unbearable. He avoids eye contact, comes home late, and when he's home, he isolates himself in the garage or the spare bedroom instead of sitting with me. The silence between us is suffocating, more painful than any argument could ever be. A few nights ago, I noticed my phone wasn't where I had left it. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. I knew, with almost complete certainty, that he had gone through it, but he didn't say a word. Instead, he carried on eerily calm, distant in a way that sent chills through me. I checked his laptop, my hands shaking as I scrolled through the search history. A family law firm. My breath caught. Every second since then has been torture. I don't know what he knows. I don't know if he's waiting for me to confess, if he's gathering evidence, if he's already decided to leave me. The not knowing is unbearable. My heart races whenever he so much as glances in my direction, waiting for the explosion that never comes. Has someone told him? Did he see something? Did I forget to delete something? I replay every moment in my mind, searching for the moment everything fell apart. I should confess. I should rip the bandage off, tell him something, maybe not everything, but enough. But I can't, because what if he's only suspicious? What if I confess and it destroys us faster? What if he already knows and is only waiting for my admission to make his decision final? The fear paralyzes me. I told my sister everything. She's the only one who knows, the only one I can turn to. It's a small relief, knowing at least one person is on my side. I don't want my marriage to end like this. We had dreams, plans. We were looking at houses, talking about starting a family. I wanted forever with him. I still do, but I can't undo what I've done. Last night, he finally confronted me. He came home late, as he has been, and sat across from me at the kitchen table. There was something different in his expression. Calm, but detached, like he had already made up his mind and was just here to deliver the verdict. He didn't ask questions. He didn't yell. He didn't want explanations. He simply said, "I know." My stomach dropped. My body reacted before my mind could catch up. I broke down, shaking, crying, though I knew it was pointless. I had just confirmed everything without saying a word, but he didn't care. He stopped me before I could say anything. His voice was hollow when he told me that nothing I could say mattered, that I could tell him I was dying right there in that moment, and he still wouldn't care. Then he told me he needed space, that he couldn't stand to share a bed with me. He asked me to move into the guest bedroom, and I did, feeling like a stranger in my own home. I asked him how he knew, but he refused to tell me. He said it didn't matter, only that I had betrayed him. I told him I would do anything to fix this, that I would start therapy, cut off all contact, that I would fight for us for what we had. He just looked at me, emotionless, and said he didn't know if there was anything left to fix. But he didn't outright say no, and that tiny sliver of hope is the only thing keeping me from falling apart completely. Then he told me he had spoken to a lawyer, that the papers were coming soon. He said it like it was nothing, like we were discussing a grocery list. I felt like the air had been knocked from my lungs. I spent the night in the guest bedroom, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what's happening. The room feels foreign, cold. I wanted to go to him, to beg him to talk to me, to let me explain, but I knew that would only push him further away. He asked for space. I have to give it to him, even if it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Today has been quiet. He barely speaks to me, and when he does, it's about bills, errands, practical things. Nothing real. It's like I don't exist beyond the logistics of our life, like he's already shutting me out, cutting me off piece by piece. I'm terrified that he's already made up his mind to leave, that no matter what I do, it won't be enough. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I even can, but I know I still love him, and I know that love might not be enough to save us. The nights are the hardest. During the day, I can find ways to distract myself, work, errands, anything to keep my mind occupied. But when night falls, when it's just me and the weight of my choices, the silence is unbearable. I lie here in the dark, staring at the ceiling of my apartment, letting it press down on me like a suffocating fog. Someone once told me that the hardest part of hitting rock bottom isn't to fall. It's lying there alone, realizing no one is coming to save you. And that's where I am, alone. It has been 3 months since the divorce was finalized. 6 months since the day everything unraveled. D-Day. I still remember the way he carried himself through the process, calm, composed, distant. He barely spoke during the mediation meetings, barely looked at me. I kept waiting for something, some moment where he would break, where he would let me see even a flicker of the emotions he must have been feeling. Anger, hurt, anything. But there was nothing. The last time we really spoke, he told me he wished me well, but that he couldn't keep living with someone who made him feel like he didn't matter. He said he deserved better, and I couldn't argue with him, because he did. Now I'm here, in this empty apartment. It's smaller than the home we shared, and the walls are so thin I can hear my neighbor's television most nights. There's no warmth here, no comfort, just a crushing loneliness that reminds me, second by second, of what I lost. I go over it in my head, again and again, replaying every moment, wondering if there was a single second where I could have stopped myself, a moment where I could have chosen differently. Maybe it was when I first let the flirting become something more. Maybe it was when he started acting distant, when I could feel him pulling away and knew, deep down, that he had already begun to suspect. Maybe that was my moment. The moment I could have come clean, told him the truth, and at least tried to salvage what we had. But I didn't. I was too afraid. I told myself I could fix things in silence, that I could cut off the affair and pretend like none of it had happened. I kept hoping he wouldn't find out, but he did. I've been in therapy since the divorce, trying to make sense of everything. My therapist said something last week that I haven't been able to shake. She asked me, "Do you regret hurting him, or do you regret losing him?" At first, I wanted to say both, but the longer I sit with it, the more I realize that my regret is rooted in my own selfishness. I regret losing him. I regret losing the life we built together. And that realization makes me hate myself even more. I wonder if he's doing okay. I hope he is. I hope he's found peace, maybe even happiness. I hope he's smiling again, laughing again, living again. But the thought of him moving on, of him loving someone else, it makes it hard to breathe. I've tried to reach out, an email, a handwritten letter, but I never hit send. I never dropped a letter in the mailbox. Because what could I even say? I'm sorry feels hollow. I still love you feels cruel. Nothing I say will change what I did. Nothing will undo the damage. So I sit in the silence and let it consume me. As for him, the man I threw everything away for, he's already on his second fling since I ended things. I guess I wasn't anything special after all. Despite the sweet words he used to whisper, the promises that meant nothing. And maybe that's the cruelest part, that I destroyed my marriage for something that was never real. There's no grand lesson here, no silver lining. I'm not a better person because of this. I'm just a woman who made terrible choices and now has to live with the consequences. If you're standing at the edge, flirting with the idea of making the same mistake, don't. Don't wait until you're lying in an empty apartment, drowning in regret, to realize what you've lost. Don't throw away someone who truly loves you for something that doesn't matter. Because once it's gone, it's gone. And the nights, the long, silent, unforgiving nights, will remind you of that forever.